In 2026, Steam passed 38 million concurrent users, while publishers continued cutting jobs, canceling projects, and closing studios across the industry. Across gaming, record player demand exists beside a production model where one-week launch can erase years of work. Inside that contradiction sits Xbox. According to its July 6th reset memo, the company plans roughly 3,200 reductions during fiscal year 2027, after admitting that Game Pass, multi-platform publishing, and broader content did not grow at the expected pace. Separately, Jason Schreier says some Xbox studio leaders detest Game Pass because they believe the service makes their games feel less valuable. That creates the central conflict between artistic freedom and corporate survival. Players want affordable access, developers need room to create, and Microsoft expects expensive projects to survive inside a business demanding stronger margins. Underfund a release, and it may look obsolete beside blockbusters, supported by enormous teams and marketing campaigns. Overspend hundreds of millions, and one-week launch can cancel sequels, erase years of work, or close the responsible studio. Originally, Game Pass promised to reduce that danger through recurring subscription revenue and a giant audience. Already, Call of Duty has escaped the day one promise. Studio leaders reportedly question the model, and Xbox's memo confirms that the wider strategy missed expectations. Today, we are separating evidence from Reddit celebration, corporate excuses, and easy panic. By the end, we will know whether Game Pass truly devalues Xbox games or merely exposes a larger failure of Microsoft's leadership. First, Schreier discussed the issue during Triple Click episode 313, released July 16, 2026. Max Tech reported his comments on July 19 and highlighted a blunt claim about leadership attitudes inside Xbox. Specifically, Schreier said some studio leaders detest Game Pass because they think it devalues games priced around $40 or more. Importantly, that does not mean every developer hates the service. Nor does it prove Game Pass alone caused Xbox's layoffs, weak margins, hardware problems, or constant strategic changes. Still, the complaint makes basic economic sense. Imagine spending years making a $40 game, only to watch customers treat it like one item inside a monthly bundle. Suddenly, the store price becomes decorative, because subscribers already paid for access and see no reason to buy separately. Congratulations, Xbox, you trained players to wait for the buffet, then acted surprised when nobody ordered the steak. Consumers still receive an excellent offer. One monthly payment lowers risk, encourages experimentation, and gives smaller games a chance to reach people who would never buy them outright. Studios, however, face a harder calculation. Traditional sales are imperfect, but they provide a clear signal someone saw the product, accepted the price, and completed a purchase. Measuring subscription success means tracking playtime retention, sign-ups, cancellations, internal targets, negotiated payments, and whatever metric leadership prefers. Nobody outside Microsoft knows how those numbers determine whether one studio receives another project. Therefore, a team can launch a respected game, attract loyal players, and still struggle to prove its business value. Picture making something people love, then waiting for an executive to explain that your ecosystem contribution missed an internal target nobody disclosed. Clear purchases do not guarantee safety, but mystery math makes responsibility easier to move. Management can celebrate engagement during launch week, then cite weak commercial impact when cancellation season arrives. Worse, developers cannot point toward millions of full-price copies and demand recognition through one number everyone understands. This is where artistic creativity collides with corporate survival. Creative teams may want to build unusual, focused games that end after 15 hours and leave a strong impression. Executives may prefer releases that keep people playing, returning, spending, and delaying cancellation. Those goals can overlap, but they are not identical. Sometimes, a strange single-player game becomes a breakout hit. Often, however, safer franchises, repeatable systems, seasonal updates, and familiar genres look easier to defend inside a spreadsheet. Consequently, developers may feel pressure to design around engagement, rather than around the strongest version of an idea. No executive needs to order anyone to ruin a game for that pressure to exist. Quietly, budgets, greenlight meetings, sequel approvals, and performance reviews reward projects that appear predictable. Art becomes a product before it reaches players, because survival depends on convincing finance teams that creativity can produce measurable retention. Here lies the uncomfortable bargain. Simultaneously, Game Pass can fund risky work through reach while pushing studios toward numbers that punish limited engagement. Supporters are right when they say subscriptions help discovery. Critics are also right when they say discovery means little if the team disappears afterward. Then Call of Duty provided the clearest evidence that Microsoft no longer treats Day One access as untouchable. Upcoming Call of Duty releases will not launch immediately on Game Pass Ultimate or PC Game Pass. Delayed access means those games arrive around a year later, after Microsoft captures the most valuable launch sales. Nothing communicates confidence in a universal model like removing the largest franchise from its defining promise. Apparently, the biggest game in the building looked at Day One Game Pass and decided exposure was not enough. Defenders can reasonably argue that Call of Duty is unique. Its scale, annual demand, and full-price sales potential dwarf most Xbox releases. Yet exceptions reveal priorities, especially when the protected title can generate enormous revenue before entering the subscription. Corporately, this becomes flexible portfolio management. Customers can call it the first giant hole in the Day One story. Previously, Game Pass Ultimate was marketed around major releases arriving immediately without another purchase. Now, Day One needs an asterisk because the most recognizable franchise follows a separate schedule. Technically, the promise survives because other first-party games may still launch inside the service. Practically, the sales pitch weakens when the most valuable release receives special treatment. Soon subscribers may need a chart showing which games arrive immediately, appear later, require another tier, or never join. Publicly, Xbox did not kill Day One. Effectively, it moved the uncomfortable part into timing rules, exceptions, and corporate explanations. Next came the July 6th reset memo, which removed any need to guess whether the wider plan met expectations. Asha Sharma described Xbox's business as unhealthy and said it operated with far lower margins than comparable companies. She also wrote that Xbox bet on Game Pass, multi-platform releases, and broader content to drive growth. Crucially, the memo admitted those businesses created meaningful value, but did not grow at the expected pace. Corporate language rarely shouts, yet that sentence arrived wearing funeral clothes. Translation: the strategy produced benefits, but not enough, not quickly enough, and not at the required profit level. Alongside that admission, Xbox announced roughly 3,200 reductions across fiscal year 2027. About 1,600 roles disappeared immediately, while 4 studios moved under new management. These cuts do not prove Game Pass caused everything. Hardware weakness, high production costs, overlapping teams, lower margins, and confused leadership also hurt Xbox. Nevertheless, Game Pass was specifically named among the major bets that failed to grow quickly enough. When an official memo says the plan missed pace, criticism stops sounding like random internet bitterness. Another shift makes the contradiction harder to ignore. After years of saying players should access Xbox games everywhere, company leaders now discuss giving people stronger reasons to buy Xbox hardware. Reports suggest selective exclusivity may return, because a platform without unique software becomes an expensive login screen. For years, Xbox said the box mattered less than reaching people through consoles, computers, cloud services, and subscriptions. Recently, the box started mattering again because customers listened and stopped seeing a reason to care. So Microsoft wants subscriptions, retail sales, multi-platform reach, exclusive games, stronger hardware, lower costs, and happier studios simultaneously. Somewhere inside that strategy deck, 6 arrows point opposite directions while an executive labels the mess flexibility. Fairly, changing a weak plan is better than defending it forever. Trouble begins because customers were sold certainty while studios built around rules now filling with exceptions. Community reaction explains why this story spread quickly. Large Reddit threads do not prove financial claims, but they reveal how many players already suspected Day One Game Pass was too generous to remain unchanged. Many users see Schreier's comments as confirmation that the people making games share those doubts. Others defend the service because it lowers barriers, revives older titles, and helps smaller projects find audiences. Neither group has Microsoft's complete internal numbers. Honest analysis must therefore separate facts, claims, and interpretation. Factually, Schreier reported hostility among some studio leaders, not universal hatred across every Xbox team. Officially, future Call of Duty releases have left immediate Game Pass access and are expected roughly 1 year later. Likewise, Xbox's memo says Game Pass, multi-platform publishing, and broader content missed expected growth. Furthermore, the company announced thousands of reductions while describing its current business as unhealthy. Together, those facts support concern. They do not establish that Game Pass alone caused Xbox's crisis or that removing the service would automatically repair anything. More likely, the subscription exposed a deeper problem. Strategically, Microsoft combined cheap access, premium budgets, creative freedom, stable studios, rapid growth, hardware relevance, and strong margins without accepting trade-offs. Eventually, something had to bend. Call of Duty shows that Microsoft protected launch revenue first. Layoffs show that studio stability came lower on the list. Exclusivity discussions show that hardware identity may return after years of neglect. Likely, Game Pass releases will follow a hybrid model. Smaller projects may still launch day one because guaranteed reach reduces sales risk. Major blockbusters may sell traditionally first, then enter the service after demand slows. Different tiers may receive different windows, bonuses, or access rules. Potentially, that structure could become sustainable. However, it would no longer match the simple fantasy that built Game Pass's reputation. Subscribers would still receive value, but they might need patience, research, and separate purchases for the biggest games. Developers might regain clearer launch sales, yet remain vulnerable to Microsoft's shifting priorities and private performance measures. Teams could receive more freedom on paper while still designing around whatever metric protects their next budget. Finally, Game Pass is not dead, and anyone claiming otherwise is selling panic instead of analysis. Even so, the fairy tale surrounding it has taken a direct hit from internal criticism and Microsoft's visible decisions. Ironically, Xbox built gaming's great buffet, filled it with premium meals, and promised cheap plates forever. Currently, the chefs reportedly resent the pricing, the accountants dislike the growth, and Call of Duty has reserved private dining. Maybe the service survives by becoming less generous, more selective, and more complicated than the original pitch. Regardless, Game Pass will still continue. Dead on the floor lies the fantasy where day one blockbusters, happy studios, rising subscribers, creative freedom, and full price value coexist forever.